I've been working on a curriculum. Um, some of the stuff probably might work. Some of the stuff we'll find out that doesn't work, and then we'll ask ourselves, hey, there's probably some things that we should be doing that we're not. We'll just kind of like work this through and just see if we can get something out of it. I think it's really cool that we got Brody King here. Hopefully, Robbie can show up. He's listed here, so hopefully he shows up. But I did I made a quick curriculum, and then now I'm actually breaking it down of covering stuff like promos, facial expressions, character development, match reviews, critiques, even going over punches, psychology, match breakdowns, pro wrestling stories, pro wrestling history, branding yourself, social media, the do's and don'ts. You know, we're already doing it. How to get booked, networking, obviously tons of Q&A. Um, 8 by 10 poses I think are very important. I think that's what us here at Santino Brothers is lacking, just how to actually do the poses. Actually bleeding in pro wrestling, and we'll probably cover that during our Zoom, and then obviously pro wrestling etiquette. And then I like to keep it open definitely for suggestions for things that I might have missed, and so that way we can go and add to it. Robbie just showed up. What's up, Robbie? How are you? You're on mute, brother. So we didn't hear you. But so when you talk, just make sure to take it off the mute. Um,
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Good to see you, Rob. Man, I miss you, brother.
Yes, I miss all of you guys.
So, I definitely have something that we're going to start doing, like core exercises. I'm not going to break us down today and have us do it, but what I am going to do is let you guys know what we'll be doing. Maybe we'll do it once on a Zoom. I don't know if we can get much of it on video, but maybe we'll just still do it as a group. But the main thing is, I'm going to probably want you guys to be doing these exercises at home. I'll be honest with you, you guys should already be doing them. You shouldn't be lacking at all. But I know, hey, nobody's ever been in quarantine as far as I know. It's different times and it's tough, and it's anything that we have probably been doing in regular life, we've become now probably took that for granted, and we know that hey, just taking a short half a mile walk actually does a lot for your cardio sometimes. So I definitely want to push the core exercises that we do today, and every day, so that way we don't get lazy. Because I'm telling you, when they open up, when there's a vaccine, whatever the case is, everybody should be ready. Everyone should have better cardio than when we left, and then most importantly, everybody should have a better wrestling mind. And I think this is something that we can really take advantage of, is studying wrestling. You know, most important, I think we all got to treat this quarantine like it's an injury in pro wrestling. And a lot of the times in injuries, especially when we're young, we think that it's the worst thing in the world. And a lot of times it is. But what happens is, if you're smart about it, and what I've learned, my buddy John Chavez told me, he says, hey, my trainer, Carlos Montana, he got injured, and he credited his injury to actually getting better at psychology and pro wrestling. And when John told me that, John is Angel Face Chavez. He wrestles at Lucha Vavoom. He used to wrestle with me in XPW. But when he told me that, that really stuck with me, to take advantage of the downtime in pro wrestling. And I think that's something that we definitely need to do, is take advantage of it. But the most importantly is not get complacent, guys. And I just want to break down some of the core exercises that we do, and I think that are actually good to help you keep in shape for professional wrestling. Some of the things that Robbie and I have developed have been like core exercises, and then especially doing stuff without weights. And a lot of the things that we do, like we'll say, for instance, if you guys want to write these down, like push-ups, squats, jumping jacks, I'd like to throw in a position in yoga called downward dog. Also, let's do lunges and then a downward dog into a push-up combination. And then also, this should just be something that you do on a daily basis. And the way you're gonna do it is each of those workouts. What is there? 5 workouts, 6 workouts, maybe. Each of those workouts, you're gonna go 45 seconds. So you don't worry about what number you're gonna be you're hitting. The number you're hitting is 45 seconds. Okay, so you get your stopwatch, you hit it for 45 seconds, and then you have 15 seconds to get to your next station. In this case, it's very simple. There is no station, just where you're standing. Then you go to squats. You do that for 45 seconds, and you're pushing yourself. You want to explode. And then you have 15 seconds to get to the next station. I'm going to tell you, the first 2 rounds, you're going to think this is bullshit, but when you actually sit there and you do it, I think it's 7 rounds times 6, eventually equals 30 minutes of actual workout time. I think it's going to take you maybe about 40 to 45 minutes, but it's only 30 minutes of actual work time. And that, really, in the grand scheme of things, 30 minutes ain't shit. But the first 2 rounds, you're going to think it's easy. As you keep going, round 3, round 4, round 5 on these core workouts, for everyone who's just coming in, we're talking about core workouts and staying in shape during this quarantine. And not only staying in shape, but we want to be in better shape than when we left. And I think, like I told some of these guys, we're going to probably do it on Thursday. We'll all do it together. We'll all be kind of off camera. We're just going to have to communicate and open our ears. But that's what makes great students and even better coaches is to use our ears and listen to what's going on. And then as we do about 7 rounds of that, it's for the first time, it's gonna beat the hell out of us, But as you continually do it, it's gonna make you better. Everybody should be waking up, and the first thing we do is push-ups. Throwing some squats in there. And I know it's tough, and I know it's hard, and I know it's easy to say, hey, let's do it tomorrow. I'm going to start fresh tomorrow. I'm going to start fresh Monday. As you look at it, man, we're probably about, 8 weeks into this quarantine now, maybe 7 weeks into this quarantine.
Yeah.
Was it 8?
Probably
Yeah,
about.
probably about 8. So, but yeah, we definitely, we want to be prepared, So what I'm going to do is these workouts that I'm talking about, I'll go ahead and post them for you guys. So in case you guys miss anything, but I definitely want you guys to keep getting with that, keep pushing yourself. The worst thing in pro wrestling is becoming complacent. I think some of our favorite wrestler is a guy like Chris Jericho. And he's never complacent. He's always changing things up. And he's if you look at him throughout the years, he continually evolves. And I think that's what we need to do. Has everybody been keeping up on their workouts? Has anybody been slacking? Joe, you been keeping up on your workout? How about your fucking flip, man? You got that shit down? Yeah, you do? All right. All right.
I did yoga for like 40 minutes today.
DDP?
Yeah.
Hey, man, that's no joke. And you know what I love about DDP, man? He's like, let's hawk it out.
Yeah.
Road Warrior 1, Road Warrior 2. And you know what I mean? It kind of like gets you going a little bit. You start thinking about Road Warrior Hawk.
That fat burner workout's no joke.
What's that one? Is that 45 minutes or something like that?
It was 45 minutes, and it was just like nonstop. It had me almost pressing the pause button a couple times.
I'm telling you, man. Hey guys, get on that yoga. It's incredible, especially now, man. You don't have much room, but a lot of us have room to at least do some yoga. And we don't have weights, but man, that yoga is no joke. And I'm telling you, I accredit it. I know Chris Jericho does.
Well, the app is really awesome too, because it sets up a workout plan for you as well. It has like beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and it's like a monthly subscription, but I paid the yearly, which was like $99 for a year. And it has nutritional videos. I guess he has a cooking show on there now. It has the workout plans, and then it has all of the workouts that he has, so you can make your own plan as well. So it's really, really easy to do.
Hey, that's good, man, because that's your coach right there on that app. and that really helps you out. So if anybody hasn't tried any type of yoga, man, I'm telling you, definitely get on it, because it's going to help you out and it's going to protect your body, especially with all the bumps that we take, and everything that we do. Yoga is really going to help you out. Stretching is probably key to what we do. Stretch. I can't implore that enough to stretch, guys. Every day you should have a regimen of 20 minutes of stretching. You guys should be RVDs. RVD was notorious for stretching, and he can do amazing things. So especially with what we do, guys. I mean, the worst thing we want is actually a freak accident, like tear our hamstring, because we're not prepared. A lot of us, including myself, I like to just wrestle and get in there and do it, but you can't do that. That's how the dads get hurt, man, because they try to play basketball like they were when they're 20 years old and they're 40 now. So it don't work that way. You got to Robbie, am I right? The warm ups are so important, right?
Definitely. You got to stretch, guys. Especially now where we don't do as much physical stuff because we're locked in. Even though you guys should be doing your own workouts, but man, you stretch, it'll make your body feel good, and then you can get that workout.
Yeah, so let's definitely not get complacent and hit those workouts. Hey Max, you been working out, man? You got some weights at home? Oh, there we go. This guy's prepared. Hey, but hey, that's the thing. Hey, well, we don't even need weights either, man. Push-ups, squats, different angle on your push-ups are definitely going to help you out. So there's no excuse, guys. Sit-ups. Look at Dom. Looks like he's doing sit-ups right now. Jeez. But yeah. So let's not get complacent, guys. I can't stress that enough. It's too easy right now to keep watching Netflix and say tomorrow. Get on it, because I'm telling you, if you don't, there's somebody that is. And in pro wrestling, there's so many schools. There's so many pro wrestlers out there. Somebody's ready to take your spot, man, because there's not enough spots to go around. So get your shit together, and if you're already working out, push harder. 1 degree harder. 1 degree, right? 212 degrees turns water into steam. And what can steam do? Steam can to move a locomotive. Okay, so at 211 degrees, it's only very, very, very hot boiling water. 1 degree extra can change everything. So push, guys, push for that 1 degree. So, before we get started, what we're going to be covering this week, what I wrote a curriculum down for is match breakdowns. For some of us like Christian who are starting off, I think this is definitely going to help you out, because as we get to the wrestling, then you'll have definitely an idea of what we're talking about. And then for others that have been doing it for 6 months, a year, semi-pro to even rookie pro, it's definitely going to help out. And then I love having guys like Robbie, Brody King, and even Dom here to give their insights on some of the match breakdown. I don't definitely plan on covering the entire match breakdown today, but we'll see how far we go. Who knows? We might cover the whole thing. We might only get through a couple of steps. And just keep in mind, if and when I talk about a match breakdown, I break it down into about, I think, like seven steps. This is one particular way to break down a match. It's not law. There's different ways to tell stories. There's different ways to tell stories when you write a book or a movie. And so the same thing goes for professional wrestling. There is not just one way. And just like in anything, just open your mind. Once you only think one way, then that's what's you start getting complacent. And we don't want that. We want to open our mind and let people teach us stuff, and let our mind expand on that. So before we get started, any questions or concerns or anything you guys got? Anything you guys want to get off your mind? Anything like that? Anybody got anything? Just speak out. You don't have to raise your hand because I might not see you. We got 2 pages going here. All right. Okay, so what we're gonna do is what we're gonna cover is the match breakdown. What I want to do is just kind of make this a little bit interactive instead of me just communicating and talking to you guys. But definitely be prepared to take notes. who can tell me, and maybe not Robbie and Brody or Dom, but who can tell me like what's one of the first things you do in a match? If we want to break this match down, what's one of the first things you want to do? Just go ahead and speak it. Who's got something?
Your entrance, establish like who's like baby and whose face, or baby and whose heel.
Yeah, definitely. You know, from opening curtain, you want to establish face and heel. You know, that's extremely important. And you know what? I like to look at it like it really kind of goes into our character development. Like if you see Brody come through the curtain with his tattoos and his spike-studded vest and his huge beard, you know what I mean? And even to the music and the colors that he wears, a lot of the times that tells you exactly what you're looking at. You know, you'd like to have the idea that you're looking at either a face or a heel, but if you can't catch that, you'll definitely catch it when the next guy comes out. You know what I mean? So you definitely want to be memorable. You definitely want to be able to establish face versus heel without coming out and telling the crowd, you know, F off. You know, that's, first of all, that's cheap heat. You know, we don't want to do that. You want to, and then also as a baby face, we don't want to beg for cheers. You know, a lot of the instance of begging for cheers is like clapping for yourself, telling them to come up. I think a lot of that sometimes it definitely works. Don't get me wrong, but if you can actually get the reaction without baiting them in to do anything, just that stone cold pop, you know, then you definitely know you're on a right track. So definitely the first thing that you want to do is establish face versus heel. How do we do that? Does anybody know how we do that? No? How do we establish face versus heel? I know somebody knows. Someone's got to speak up. Hey, especially if you want to be pro wrestler, man. Hey,
All right.
Squeaky Wheel, who's got it? Who's got it? Speak on it. Speak on it, Dane. Let's see it.
All right.
You
So, I mean,
got
if you establish like face and heel, I mean, a lot of it has to do with like your movement and your body language and, you know, how you come off in the ring when your opponent gets in there. Like, are you like scared off or are you like, hey, let's fight this guy, you know, fight the good fight. So, say body movement.
body movement,
language.
facial expressions, colors that you wear sometimes work. You know, I think that's very important in pro wrestling. Is if you got some really cool brand new red gear, and your opponent is more established in the company, and he's going to be wearing red that night, you know what? You better change your fucking gear and put the purple gear on or the blue gear on, because you know I think sometimes you guys it's just too much red. You know, I think that's very important. You know, colors, facial expressions will tell you who a heel and face are. You know, what does a face do without speaking? What does a face do to establish being a face? Go ahead, Joe.
They smile.
Yeah, absolutely. They smiled. Somebody else have an answer?
I was gonna say, what about doing flash, like just being flashier? Like, wouldn't a face typically be flashier, whereas a heel would be a lot less flashy, basically?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And remember, like these rules aren't set in stone. You know, there definitely are heels out there that are flashier and it works. You know, the main thing about the greatest thing I love about pro wrestling is that honestly, man, it's made up. And does it look good? Does it make sense? Is it safe? And if we can say yes, 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 then we can create and we can evolve in pro wrestling. It doesn't have to necessarily stay the same way. But yeah, so that's definitely a great point. Is you know, a face will, I don't know, 8 times out of 10 be flashier than the heel. You know, I think that's a solid rule, especially for beginners and for rookies and for new students coming out. Is that is following these rules will help you establish how to break down a match, and then really help you evolve. You know, so you know, being a you know, throwing a drop kick, like in my old school ass way of thinking, throwing a drop kick is a face move. You know, like what's another face move? Thinking in the opening of a match. Go ahead, Christian.
I was saying about the entrance, but I don't.
Okay, go ahead. Speak on the entrance, brother.
High-fiving the crowd, the audience, when they're
Yeah.
coming down the ramp and all that stuff.
Yeah, high-fiving them, definitely. That's definitely going to help out. Does anybody know another face move?
Arm drag.
Yep.
Exactly, right? An arm drag. I like to think like an arm drag is something a heel shouldn't do. Hey, maybe you're gonna have to. I don't know. Maybe you add your twist on it to make it work. Maybe you add your character on it to make it work. But if we're talking very meat and potatoes of breaking down a match and beginners learning how to break down a match, yeah, like I would say the drop kicks, the hip tosses, the arm drags as a face move. So now we're learning. Hey, we're establishing how to be a face with our moves. Just our move set. There's a lot more that goes involved into it. But these little tips are going to help you and enable you to get to that Stone Cold level. That huge John Cena level. And I think that's where people should want to strive to get, and even beyond that. Let's see, Robbie, what's your take on the opening of a match and doing and establishing the face and establishing the heel?
Yeah, it should really be, your baby face is the happy-go-lucky guy. He's the good guy, the hero, and he should always portray that. Getting in there, he should always out wrestle your heel when you're wrestling. Maybe the heel does a lockup, tries to go for a headlock. The babyface counters it right away into a headlock, maybe a headlock takeover. Always 2 moves to your heels. 1 move is what I believe on it.
Yeah, and once again, guys, like these lessons that we're giving you, they're not law. So when you go in there and you tell Stone Cold 2 moves to your 1 move, like Al Snow will probably laugh you out the fucking arena. You know what I mean? But because as you're a pure wrestler, there is no one way to do it. So I really want to emphasize this is like the if because when I was coming up, I'm telling you, man, they would talk about psychology and wrestling, and I would just nod my head and smile like I knew what the fuck they were talking about, and I had no fucking clue what the hell psychology was. In wrestling. And then they would tell me, oh, you just wake up one day and psychology, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna wake up one day and know psychology. Yeah, and fast forward to now, it's like, no, we teach it. This is how you do it. This is how you break it down. There is no one way to do it, but here is a way to do it. Brody King, what's your biggest takeaway on the psychology when you're first learning it? Is it hard for you? Was it hard? Was it very easy?
I think psychology is probably the hardest part of wrestling. The physical stuff was easy to me, at least, but yeah, the psychology is the hardest part. I remember, specifically, you would always tell me to slow down, and then when I would slow down, then you would tell me that I need to be a little bit faster at some points, and like that stuff never made sense to me. And then I feel like one day it just kind of clicked, where it was like, it's like I relate a lot of things. Brian Kendrick once said that wrestling is like a song, and it has to have a cadence to it, and it has peaks and valleys. And that's when you have those gear changes in your match. If you're a heel at first, you're probably not going to be the fast guy. And then but then when you're in the heat, you got to speed it up a little bit, not go full steam, but you have to be the aggressor and being the one keeping the interest in the match. As far as I kind of have a different idea of heel and face. Like obviously you and Robbie have the more old school approach to it, which I think when you're first learning out in wrestling is huge, and you should learn that way. But then as I say, independent wrestling now, and even it's starting to bleed into mainstream wrestling. I think that heels and faces are very much a gray area now. It's more of someone just playing a character and then being situational with that character.
Yeah, that's like that's the beauty of pro wrestling is that it definitely does evolve, and I think as old timers, that like that's why I always say, man, there is no one way because there starts becoming new ways to do it, different ways to do it. Because when that's like what I teach, and I think what a lot of the coaches teach are what works for me. Same thing. Like if Brody's gonna teach, he's gonna teach you what works for him, and so there is no one particular right way to do it. And so but maybe you're right, Brody. That guy was right. Hey, you just said one day it just clicked on you. So maybe that's what he meant. Hey, one day you're just gonna wake up and know it and understand it. So if you find yourself, treading water in there and not understanding the psychology or the breakdown of it, as you keep watching it and as you keep doing it, obviously we can't do it now, but as we keep doing it, it will click on you guys.
I've seen it firsthand too. I mean, in the dojo, it's like I will hear Robbie tell someone 4,000 times the same thing, and then it just goes in one ear and out the other. And then, maybe me or Bateman or Jake Atlas says something, and they're just like, "Oh, that makes sense." And Robbie just throws his hands up. He's like, "What the fuck?" But it's like sometimes it's just like the way that you get told or the way you see it, and it's just a different perspective. That's why it's important to learn from everybody.
Yeah, I think that's what makes Santino Brothers special is if I can't teach you a role, I'm gonna go grab maybe Haas or somebody and say, Haas, I did everything I could do to teach this guy a role. I can't do it. I know you can do it, brother. And
Yeah.
I'll come back 20 minutes later and he'll have his eyes wide and look exhausted. And so he says to me, please don't ever do that to me again, but they can roll now. So it's different coaches. Definitely. You might get in there with Robbie and you might get fucking intimidated as hell. And so you're not even listening to what the fuck he's saying. And that's why you keep fucking up. You might get in there with Brody and for some reason it's chiller for you. I don't know. But I think that I've learned, after 12 years of running wrestling school, is that definitely, sometimes if I can't get through to them, I have to find another coach that can, and that's the most important part. Doesn't matter if I can get through to them. It's just if we can figure out one of the coaches to get through them. And sometimes it might be, a student coach, and just because it's that comfortability aspect of it, especially with wrestling, because there's a lot of it's rough and tough. I never had the luxury of showing up the first day of pro wrestling school, but I can only imagine that it's nerve wracking. Is that true, Robbie?
Yeah, you go in there, and it's like, man, what did I get myself into? What am I going to get myself into? You're excited because you're about to go on this journey of living out your dream, but it's still like, oh shit, like, did I really get myself into this? And yeah, it takes, if you're really committed to it, it'll take a while to get comfortable. But once you get comfortable, you get through it.
Once you get comfortable, it starts getting fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, when it starts getting fun, oh, forget it, man. This is it's the most incredible drug that I've ever done. To tell you the truth, wrestling in the middle of that ring, people either chanting your name or booing you. It's the greatest feeling of all time. It definitely is, man. Yeah, there's nothing else like it. So, all right, getting back to our match breakdown. Does anybody have any questions so far with and we're just walking through the fucking curtain and establishing face versus heel. Does anybody have any questions on that? If you do, just go ahead and speak up.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So I think it was kind of put into our head that if you're face, you should never throw the first strike. But say like you want your whole shtick to be like, you're a martial artist, you want to do a bunch of like strikes. Well, is that like something that falls along the lines of like kind of just exception almost, or is that something that you still have to like adhere to?
There's like going back. If you're going through the baby steps of learning how to do a match, yeah, the face isn't going to throw a punch. But I think Brody could speak on this, where wrestling does evolve to where you can throw a punch. A lot of the times I like to just say it, make it justified. You know, whether it's in somebody's actions, what they say, maybe they said something about your wife or whatever, and then when you go out there and throw a punch, you know, I think a lot of the times people think a baby face is a goody two shoes, which is not the case. You know, like Stone Cold was a baby face. You know, I don't know if he's a baby face, but he was a face. But you don't necessarily have to be a goody two shoes. You know, so throw that out the mind that a baby face has to be a goody two shoes, because you got to remember, first things first, before you're a face or you're a heel, you're a pro wrestler, and pro wrestlers are tough and pro wrestlers are badass. And I think you got to have that mindset going into it. You know, what's your take on the Brody? What's your take on the face throwing a punch?
I mean, it is very situational. Like, I have had the privilege of, being the aggressive face, like I'd say a lot of the time. I mean, it's very dependent, because sometimes you go in trying to want to be the heel, but then the crowd just gets behind you and you kind of have to, accept it and then go from there. Like, if the whole crowd is cheering for you and you tell them to fuck off, then you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Sometimes you just kind of got to let it happen, and that's when you're going to sell more merch at the end of the night, and that's all that matters, is making money. But yeah, like, for instance, if I'm going to be a face, and the other person is the heel, then I'm probably not going to land the first strike, because then it's just like, it takes away from his heat. And like, if I instantly chop him, it's like, oh, game over. Like, I'm going to do my shit now. But it's like, if it's constantly him ducking and dodging, and then eventually, he catches me with a good one, and then it's like, oh, like, a spot that I usually like to do is, I'll kind of like move, or they'll move faster than me. So technically they're being the face at the beginning, but then eventually, they slip up and they end up chopping me and get cocky, and then I just no sell it, chop them, and then there's a big pop from it. When I think of, as far as what you're saying right now, if you're trying to have this martial artist, obviously, anime type gimmick, I think that you should probably go more towards the, like, Mr. Miyagi, like, you should be on the defense at first, and then, strike when you have to. And that'll make you more of a baby face right there, because people are going to see that you have restraint and that you're not willing to engage unless you have to.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, Rob. Who was going to speak on it?
No, I agree. Strike, especially nowadays, it is situational. But again, you always, like Brody said, I always like to think of it as, if you're in a fight, you're not trying to, you're trying to de-escalate the fight until you reach that point where you've had enough and dude's coming at you and you got to whoop his ass. So
it is weird when a face just is punching in the shine. It's weird.
Other thing is, what's it going to do for your later strikes? What's it going to mean when you're striking later on? If you stroke, if you're striking that early, you know what I mean? You always, it's like I always say, you got to make your things, everything you do, you got to make it mean something. If you're striking right away, later on, when it's time for your comeback, what do those strikes mean? You know what I mean?
And I'm just going to comment on this. I think anyone that's taken a class with me, they just hear me harping on how much I hate kicks. So if you are going to be a martial artist, you better actually be a martial artist and know how to kick people properly. Because if you throw a shitty kick and you're supposed to be a karate guy, it does not get over well.
That's another shoot yourself in the foot type thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You have to be authentic now. Nowadays,
Yeah.
you have to be able to produce what you're selling.
Yeah, if you're gonna throw those thigh kicks, you better learn how to throw them properly. And I think also, like, learning how to, properly fight. We should be watching MMA. We should be watching boxing. See how the body, how people protect themselves. I always like what was started new. I don't know how many years ago, maybe 5, maybe 10 years ago, started where dudes started blocking some of the punches that are coming in. Because why wouldn't we fucking block a punch? With so many years, pro wrestlers just eat it, and wind up for the Rock's big punch. But I kind of like that thinking. Getting really deep into it and thinking about What are we doing? We're in a fight, so I should block. And I always like to think you block one, he punches, it goes down, he punches, it goes down, punch. Now you're opened up and you can start eating punches. Because obviously in pro wrestling we're working together and we want to keep that. But I think if we start thinking a little bit deeper in what we're doing and having it make sense, I think it works. And then going back on the face, I always like you to be justified. So if you punched me in the face and you're the heel, you're the heel and I'm the face and I get punched, that kind of says now it's open season for me to retaliate. Because why? Because I'm not a goody two shoes, even though I'm a face. Like if you slap my mom and I'm a good guy, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you. And I might violently beat the shit out of you, but that doesn't make me a bad guy because I did that. It says you were justified, And I think if we start thinking about that part of psychology, we're not goody two shoes, And maybe your gimmick is a goody two shoes. I don't know. But I think a lot of times we get that mixed up. That face is a goody two shoes, and I can't do anything. No, you're an aggressor also, because you're a professional wrestler first before you're a face and heel.
Going back on what you were saying, Joey, I think it is very important, like you said, with the blocking and stuff, to be creative with stuff like that, because that's what really stands people apart from each other. Like if you're going to go into a match with me, you're going to know that I'm going to try to chop you. And if there's a way that you can block it or avoid it, then that is like instant. If I'm being the aggressor, then that gives me so much more to work with. And it gives me more to work with in a sense of me selling. Like, for instance, I had a match with David Starr where he took a bunch of chops and then he baited me in for one, and I went for it and he put his head down and I chopped his forehead. So it's like he basically headbutted my hand. So I was able to sell my hand and he could kind of switch gears and take over from there.
Hey, did he tell you that he was going to do that? Did you call that spot, or he just did it?
Yeah, we called that spot.
Oh, okay.
There was also like a time I was wrestling Walter where Walter went for a chop on me, and I just took a step back and he whiffed, and then it gave me that opening to go in on it. But like those little things like get huge reactions from the crowd, because it's like they're expecting the payoff of him chopping, and then it's like it doesn't happen. That those get as much reaction as it actually happening.
Yeah, that's that in wrestling. And what we're going to talk about in the match breakdown this week is the Sarsa, right? What's Sarsa? Story, anticipation is the second one, right? And that anticipation is what gives people that reaction because they were about to feel it, And I think that's the same thing, when a face gets his comeuppance, they want you should be the heel should, if he's doing his job right. He's getting enough heat so that way when Robbie's making his comeback and he's the face, they want to see me get my ass handed to me. They're anticipating it. And that's that anticipation that we have to build in our match, starting from the opening curtain, starting from establishing face versus heel, So if we establish face versus heel, coming through the curtain, everybody does their poses. Maybe you snarl to the fans, like if you're William Regal, so that can say I'm being a heel. Like Christian said, maybe your kids has his hand out and you high five it. That's establishing as the face. So now we're in the ring. Little things. The referee is gonna check you. If I'm a face, here's my wrist to check my wrist, and I think Jeremy could probably, if he's here, he could speak on this. And then as a face, I'm also gonna lift my knee up so the referee doesn't have to go down. If I'm a heel, sometimes I don't move. If he wants to check me, fuck him, and I'm not gonna lift my leg up. Just little things that can say that I'm a heel in it. What are some of the things, Jeremy, that some of the wrestlers do to establish that they're a heel or a face, just when you're doing the check?
Heels, sometimes they mess with me. They might put their foot out and I go to check it and they take it away or something to try to make me look foolish. They might try to like mess up my hair or something. Just different ways, I guess, to kind of mess with me. Faces, like you said, faces are just good about like, oh yeah, I know this is your job to check, so go ahead and check. It's easy with them. They're not resisting at all. I hear this a lot with heels is like, did you check him already? And it's good, but it's overplayed, I think. So if you're on a show and you are a heel, I would watch the matches because I've had that happen like multiple times on a show. Maybe it's because I'm a ref and like I notice it more, but fans might notice that a lot too. So you don't want to, repeat the same thing that the other heels are doing on the show. That is one.
And that's definitely key in watching the matches before you go on. A lot of the times, I think some of the wrestlers will take the entire time backstage to call a match, but what you should do is, take a minimal amount of time to call your match, think about it in your head, but also watch the other matches because maybe you have a power bomb spot or a pile driver set in your match and they do it. And maybe sometimes I've seen it, and a lot of times with these moves like the cutter or the stunner, someone will do it in the first match, someone will do it in the second match, and you're like, well, I already have it set, so I'm going to do it in the third. You should be creative enough to audible out of that move, and that's definitely something that Jeremy brought up. So that's definitely important on watching the other matches.
Especially since you guys train together, it's like a hive mind situation where a lot of you are thinking the same way, or you just learned something that everyone else learned the same day. And I've watched a few live shows, and 4 out of 5 matches have one of the same spots in it, like move for move the same spot, and you're like, come on guys, like you have to be like thinking about what everyone else is going to do and then watch the match, and if you have to change it right away, like, because even if the spot is not as good, it is better than it being the same.
Definitely. I always like different is better. Everyone's doing a flip destroyer pile driver. Man, find the next cool move. You know what I mean? Find the next cool move, like the flipping DDT.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
You don't like that one, Brody?
No, fuck no.
All right. So now, the referee checked us, and now we're going to circle up. We're circling up. We're about to. We haven't even touched yet. And some of the greatest matches of all time. The crowd is going ape shit, and the wrestlers haven't even touched yet. That's like mega shit. That's like, I don't know, maybe Rock versus Hogan. What are some other examples of that? Of two guys before they even touch, just people losing their mind. Because what is that? That's not only the story, but that's the anticipation of to see these guys finally lock up and grid and lock horns. So I think that's so important. But now going back, maybe this is not a WrestleMania match. What are some of the things that we can do to establish face versus heel before we locked up? We just been checked, and now we're circling. We're circling. Does anybody have any idea what we can do? How about just go for it, Adam?
Yeah, I say the way that you move, competence versus cowardice. If you're walking confidently but not cockily, and then being humble versus being sheepish. So just these little changes in how you move and how you move versus your opponent to just further establish whether like who's physically dominant, who's mentally dominant, and start to plant little ideas in the audience's head of the kind of wrestling that you're about to do against this person, and also what your priority is. Do you have a body part target in mind? Are you going to outstrength them? Just start to give the audience an idea of what you're about to go and do, also taking into account whatever story or psychological lead up was going into the match.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the greatest things is like somebody that I like to watch is like Ric Flair, and Ric Flair always does the backing off, and he's always backing off from his opponent. And that's definitely one of those instances of him establishing that he is the heel, he is the coward, you know. Another one, and maybe this is another Ric Flair example, is going in for the lockup and not locking up, but maybe strutting out. You know, that's something that is establishing his cockiness. The face is sitting there. Usually, the face looks like an asshole. Like a dumbass because he was ready to lock up. I think what another one is. What does anybody else have any other clues to establish face versus heel before we lock up? We're circling up right now.
Taunting the baby face, like, come on, let's lock up, and then you could like be backing up, and then like, whoa, I'm not ready to lock up yet, and then you
Absolutely, taunting is important. I think when we create our video game, what's one of the key features is taunts. So, and I always like to say, hey man, we are creating our character. So I always like to go back to some of those video games, and if you don't have a taunt and it's in the video game, in the wrestling video game, you should probably have a fucking taunt. I think that's elementary, but that's elementary to me. It might not be elementary to you. So so get on those games, and if you're missing something, get it in there. If you don't have the taunt from the entranceway, the taunt on the apron, and a taunt on the corner, and a taunt in the middle of the ring, then you got work to do.
Yeah.
Have all those taunts. I think Pete, did you have an answer for when we before we lock up how to establish face versus heel?
Sure. Babyface reaction, reaching out, feeding off the crowd, reading the reaction from the crowd and feeding into that. If it's you're cheering for The Rock or you're cheering for Hogan, he's going to turn and he's going to put the ear up and he's going to go to the crowd and he's going to draw from that and try to push that energy.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see the Rock stopping and smelling the air. And right, he's basking in the chants from the crowd, and all these little things. It's like what Brody was talking about earlier. These details that are so important, right? Like the rolls and the bumps and running the ropes and all that shit that kicks your ass and injures us. Like for the most part, that's pretty easy. It's these details that really take you to that next level, and that's why a lot of the older guys will say less is more, and they'll preach it. Less is more, because I can get more of a reaction from a look than a cool spot sometimes, And I think Scott Hall used to say that to the luchadors and say, man, that shit was the coolest shit I've ever seen in the world. I can never wrestle like that. I can never do a move like that. But you know what? Watch, I'll get a bigger pop out there with a headlock. And he would do his and they would pop. And that's just this is actually something that I've been telling Jake since he's been over at NXT. That's just having a little motherfucker in you. You got to have that little bit of motherfucker in you that I'm going to outshine you guys. You guys were great, but I'm going to outshine you. And I think sometimes what I see in wrestling is a lot of too much of the get along gang. But I think you got to have that competitive edge in you. That competitive edge that Brody just wrestled, but you know what, Brody? I'm going to outshine you. And Brody should be coming to the back saying, top that shit, motherfucker. And I'm going to be like, oh, this guy. You got to have that. You got to have that fucking edge, that little bit of motherfucker in you. It's so important. So important, I think. What do you think, Robbie and Brody?
I agree.
Yeah, just to give a couple examples, I think that a lot of the time when you're a student, you think that the heel has to be kind of a coward or a bitch ass, and there's definitely the other side of that where you're just overly confident and like more of the powerhouse. Especially in my case, like everyone is going to be smaller than me for the most part. So a few things that I would do to establish being the heel is the face always moves first. Like if we're circling up, I'm not even going to get out of the corner. They're going to move to me, and then I'll start walking away. Or I just walk right to the center of the ring. So it's like already intimidating my opponent. And yeah, to go off of what Pete said, if there's an obvious face match, if we're circling up and they're chanting, let's go, okay, I'll stop and I'll just kind of like look at the crowd and like maybe smirk at them or something to like be like a fuck you to the crowd. And get the babyface a little bit more fired up on, wanting to start the fight.
Yeah. Oh hell yeah, man. Yeah. If you're not in this, ready to kick some fucking ass, like man, this is not for you. Like you gotta have that in you. So, and this is all in the instance before we've locked up now, before we've even locked horns and before we've even touched each other. These are all these little details that are involved in the wrestling match. And you know what I like about this Zoom is what I would always tell Robbie is that we need to talk to you guys more. And but a lot of times it's like, hey, we got a certain amount of time, but we need ring time, and we're weighing which one do you need more? You obviously need both, but a lot of times you need the ring time since we have the ring there. But what makes this great is that we can actually stop and talk to you guys about the details before we've even locked up. I mean, we've already covered 50 minutes and we haven't even locked horns yet on our talking about establishing and breaking down a match. So once we lock up finally, right? We stopped and we smelled the air and the crowd's eating it up and going ape shit. Once we lock up, what's some of the ways that we can establish heel and face through our hold to hold? Anybody have any clue? What I like to do is obviously if I'm a heel, I don't want to out wrestle my face ever. If I have something cool that I want to do as a heel, I can still do that cool move. I still just don't want to outshine my face. I want my face to shine up a little bit more in my hold to hold. Now, for instance, maybe your character is I'm a motherfucking wrestler and I'm a heel, so I'm gonna, rip apart this guy. So if that's your character, that's a different story. But when I call it as a heel, I want to grab a headlock and hold it. I want to grab it like in my mind. I'm going deep dive right now. I'm a heel wrestler named Chaos, and all I want to do is I want to put Robbie in a fucking headlock until I crush his fucking skull and his eyeballs pop out and he taps out. That's my game plan. Getting deep dive into it. I just want to grab one fucking headlock, and if Robbie keeps outshining me and out wrestling my headlock, keeps getting me out of my headlock, I put the headlock back out. He puts me in a top wrist lock, right? I gouge his eyes. And I put him back into that headlock, and he pulls it out again and puts me in a hammer lock. And I elbow him in the back and grab my fucking headlock again. And now he out wrestles me and grabs his own headlock, does a headlock takeover, and covers 1-2, kick out. What does that do to me as a heel? That should frustrate the shit out of me, and I should show it by what I would do is I'd probably kick the fucking rope. You know what I mean? And show it in my eyes. That's something that's so important in wrestling. This is also when we're coming out of that curtain. Is what are our eyes saying? I could be dressed up as a heel, and I could even be snarling like a heel. But if my eyes don't say then it's not believable. So I think that it starts with those eyes. So if Robbie just out wrestled me and he outshined me on the hold to hold, now I'm pissed as a heel. I kick the rope and I look at the friggin' ref and I want to say he's cheating, ref. I'm frustrated. I have to show that frustration. And once again, that's me. Brody's gonna tell you about his type of match and it's totally different. But that's me. That's the point I want to get to, whether I'm playing face or heel. If I'm playing face, I want to get my heel to that point of being that frustrated. Why? Because it's going to lead to the initial cut. This isn't the cut off. This is what I like to add in is the initial cut, where it's Robbie puts me in that headlock takeover cover. I go to grab him. He holds me, puts me back in that headlock, and I'm fucking pissed. So what I'm going to do for an initial cut is I might elbow him in the stomach a couple of times and give him a chop right here to the throat to really stop him like, fuck your shit. You know, stop this nonsense. You're outshining me right now. You're making a fool out of me. I got my sponsors and my manager and my coach in the crowd, and I told them I'm the greatest, and you're fucking making me look like shit. That's the deep dive again, right? Going in there as a wrestler, you know? So I fucking chop him one to slow him the fuck down because I'm the star here as the heel, you know? And then what happens next from there? I know one of you guys knows. What happens next from there? I go in and whip him off. I don't know. I don't have to whip him off. I could do anything. I can go to grab a headlock, whatever the case is. What he's gonna do there is he's now the face is gonna shine. You know, so he shined in his wrestling. When I call my match, I like my face to shine in the wrestling, the hold for hold, to out wrestle me as a heel, show that I get frustrated to where I initially cut him off, and now I'm gonna put some damage on him. At least that's what I think. As a heel, I'm gonna put some damage on him. I whip him to give him the big fucking clothesline, but the heel is the face is the fucking hero. He ain't gonna go out like that. He's gonna duck that clothesline. You know what I mean? And he's gonna shine. And then we go back to those. What were those face moves? He's gonna maybe hit the arm drag. He's gonna hit the hip toss, and then he's gonna hit that drop kick. And I like to call it in numbers. And I'm really trying to break it down for beginners here. I like to call it in numbers. You know, the numbers are if I do a arm drag, that's a number one. Then the number two move shouldn't be below, it shouldn't be a 0, right? The number two move should be higher than 1, so it's a number 2. Maybe it's a hip toss, you know, and then what's higher than a hip toss or what's bigger than a hip toss? Maybe a drop kick, you know, and then what's bigger than a drop kick? Maybe I'm gonna pick him up and body slam him, you know, and if I do that, at that point, I'm hoping my fans are at the edge of their seat, you know, and obviously we can call any move we want. We can call any spot we want, but we got arm drag, hip toss, drop kick, big body slam, and as a heel, that's too much. This is where I'm going to become that coward that Adam talked about. I'm going to become that coward, and I am going to powder out of the ring. Does everybody know what that means? Powder out of the ring, get out of the ring, powder out. Oh yeah, I used to be honest, man. They used to say, yeah, powder, and I used to smile and nod my head. I didn't have a fucking clue what the hell powder meant either, you know. So if you don't know what it means, hey, talk to me. I've been doing this 26 years, so pro wrestling jargon is normal to me, real normal. So you know, if I say anything and you don't know what it means, message me later, ask me the question, ask Brody, ask Robbie, ask them what the hell we were talking about sooner than later, because I think I nod my head and smile. I don't know, 5, 6 years maybe 5, 6, 7 years I would do that, and it made it really tough on me. So ask questions. But yeah, so he hits his drop kick, he hits his body slam, and as a heel, I'm getting the fuck out of there because I don't want no more. And as a face, he's like, come on, motherfucker, I'm gonna give you more. You know what I mean? He's not necessarily, now I like to say, right, I don't want to beg for it, even though I've done it as a face. I don't want to beg and say, come on, crowd, pump up. No, I want to go to this guy and say, come on, motherfucker, let's get some more. And I'm on the outside, I'm like, no, I don't want more, man. I need 2 seconds to breathe. You know, I need to yell at Jeremy and say, Jeremy, check him. I don't know, like, give me a second, you know. Hey, he's cheating, he's doing this, he's doing that, right? But also those are those details. We can go through all these steps, you know, in breaking down a match. And if we're just going through them without having that emotion involved in it, without taking that deep dive in pro wrestling, and I think you guys all have to take that deep dive, go into to that area where people say, man, you like this shit's real to you. And yeah, it is. It should be real to you. Be able to have a switch and turn it on and off, obviously. But man, if you go into that deep dive on it, your details and your character, you're not even gonna have to think about that anymore. You're not thinking about powdering out and waiting for Robbie's dive or the next spot. You're thinking about powdering out and saying, I need a fucking breath to breathe. Because if you're taking a deep dive in the match, you don't know the spot, right? The wrestler that works behind the scenes obviously knows the spot, but the wrestler that just went out there, this is a bout. And I don't know what the guy's supposed to be doing, right? So I like to think about that as I go in there. And so pay attention to the details of me yelling at the ref or me backing off and saying, I'm out of here. That's the one I used to like to do was, I think maybe this works in the indies a lot better, is I'm out of here. I don't need this shit anymore. And I start walking back to that curtain. Hopefully that gets me some heat, you know? And then,
if you're the champion, you grab the title and you leave and you're like, fuck this shit.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. And then they say, the commissioner comes out and says, if you leave and you get counted out, it's going to be a title change. And now I'm like Bret Hart saying, what the fuck? Why the fuck do I got to come back after an hour-long match? This is bullshit. You know, I shouldn't have to wrestle. I signed a contract for an hour-long match. This is bullshit. You know? And so I come back, and what should happen next? And this would be really simple. After the face shined, I come back to the ring, right? Very cowardly. I come back to the ring. What happens next, Rob?
Oh, me?
Yeah, Bubba. You know what happens next.
This should be, yeah. Once you get in that ring, this comes that heel gets that cutoff.
Yes. The fucking cutoff. So we have the initial cut. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Robbie.
Yeah, he's like you said before, I'm tired of all this shit. I don't need this shit. Commissioner just fucked me saying I got to get back in the ring if I get counted out. He's changing my title. So what am I going to do? I'm going to run in there and try to beat his ass. He's going to want to fight. I cut him off dirty. I'm in control. It's the heel cutoff. And then it changes the momentum of the match at that point.
Yes, very important. It changes the momentum. We call the momentum in wrestling the gears. The gears, be able to turn the gears up and down. And when you cut them off, right, you come into the ring, or you're coming up to the ring, you're coming up to the apron, and the face is so like, I'm ready to kick your fucking ass. He goes to grab you and reaches over the top rope, and easy one is the heel grabs the guy's head, chokes him over the rope like he's Macho Man, and he cuts him off. There's many different ways to cut off. I could come back into that fucking ring, and maybe I bait my face out. Face comes running out to chase me. I go back into the ring. He comes in. This was always an easy cutoff, was just to cut him off as he's rolling into the ring. Right, but as we evolve with wrestling, I used to I'd hit Robbie and try to cut him off, and he'd be like, "Fuck that shit," and break it and start punching me to make me believe, or make the fans believe, that we're gonna go into a second shine. And you could go into a second shine. There's no fucking rule about it. There's guidelines to follow, but there's no rule about it. Maybe we go into a second shine that's hotter than the arm drag hip toss drop kick. But if we're going back to less is more, we're not going to go to another shine. Robbie's he's going to roll in. I'm going to hit him. Robbie's going to break it, and he's going to start firing up on me. Robbie's going to whip me, and maybe I'm going to do a reversal and give him a knee to the gut. That's a cutoff. It doesn't have to be a pile driver. A pile driver is a finish, not a cutoff. Maybe Robbie whips me to the corner. I reverse it. Robbie goes up and over. A simple one that I really love is I step to the side and kick you in the stomach. I like to think, what should my cutoff be? And it's very simple, guys. Cutoff could be as simple as just cut him off by choking him right there. Or what body part are you going to work? Maybe you want to get a little bit more detailed. Maybe I bait Robbie out. Robbie comes out of the ring. I roll back in, right, as a heel. I wait for him. Robbie rolls in. I give him the boots, but Robbie overcomes that, breaks it, right? He punches me, and then he whips me to the corner. Okay, I reverse it. Robbie puts his boot up. Robbie's sitting in the corner. He puts his boot up because I'm rushing in. Now, if I'm detailed, maybe I grab his leg, his calf over my shoulder, my hand's right here by his knee, and I drop to my knees, simulating that I just torqued his knee. So now that cutoff, that exact cutoff can lead me right into working his knee. Maybe my finish is a half crap. I don't know. And also when you're calling these matches, I like to call the finish first for many reasons. You know, you don't have time. If you don't have time to call a match, the first thing you should call is the finish. So at least you know the finish. And if you know how to work, then you'll get to that finish. You know, it might be a little bit rough, but you should be able to do it. I also like to call the finish first because I don't know what's my finish. Maybe my finish is a DDT. So then I like to think in my psychology, if my finish is a DDT, then maybe my cutoff should be something with the neck. You know, one that I always loved was a match with Brian Kendrick, and I think it was cruiserweight classic with I think he wrestled Ibushi.
Yeah.
And man, I think they were both on the apron, one side of the turnbuckle, one on the other side of the turnbuckle, and they were fighting. I think Brian Kendrick turned Ibushi around and draped his neck over the metal turnbuckle that we stand on. And man, that really hurt my neck because I felt it. I really, really felt it. Brian Kendrick is always so very detailed. His finisher was I think it was the bully headlock or something like that, Shawn Michaels' old finisher, and that was something where you torque the neck backwards, like a backwards headlock takeover. But his cutoff was torquing that fucking neck on the turnbuckle to really make you believe. And I think Ibushi had said he had broken his neck, so they had going to your commentator saying, "Hey, I'm going to do this move. I just want to reiterate, let the people know that hey, he had broke his neck once." And so now it's really describing the pain to the fans, you know, that are watching at home. So going back to what finishes am I calling? I like to call maybe the finish. You know, if it's a DDT, then maybe my cutoff should be a working the neck of some sort. You know, so it's always working backwards. You know, so that's where my cutoff should be. Whether it's torquing the knee, stepping to the side, kicking to the gut, and if I kick him to the gut, maybe I'm working the gut. Maybe there's a storyline with the ribs of some sort. I don't know. You know, just getting detailed into it. I always liked when Doug came back, and I think somebody put him in after he dislocated his hip, and when he came back, I think somebody put him in a banana split, and that banana split's where you stretch the fucking the groin, and really, that just really put pain, really put pain into my head about utilizing that. Obviously, you got to be careful, and he must have been healthy in order to do that. But it really just using stuff that happens in real life and taking it towards towards your wrestling always helps out tremendously. So that's where that cutoff should be. Robbie and Brody, do you guys have anything to add to the cutoff?
I think the cutoff has to be super defined. Like I think when I watch a lot of the practice matches and stuff like that, it kind of just gets blurred in there, and they just go from the shine to the heat. But I think it's one of the most important parts of the match is that gear change between the shine and the heat, because that's the heel's moment to really shine at that moment. To if it's a good enough cutoff, then you don't even have to touch the person for 30 seconds. That's your time to talk to the audience, to talk to the ref, to talk to the wrestler, to get that heat started, and then you go into the heat really putting it to them. So it's really important to get that good cutoff.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things that Brody mentioned again was those gears, turning your gears up and down. And I like to think a cutoff for a heel is slowing everything down.
That's basically that's the comeback for the heel.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Definitely is. Now I'm in control, as a heel. I like to turn it down. And going back, I remember wrestling a match in front of 20 fucking people, right here in Southgate. And I remember it was like Human Tornado and maybe Angel faced Chavez. I'm wrestling as the Santino brothers, me and Mongo. And they're shining on us. And obviously they're supposed to shine, I don't think we called the spot because me and Mongo were being dicks to Human Tornado. So he wanted to call the match. And we were like, nah, kid, we'll call it a little bit. We'll call it a little bit till fun. And they were like, your music's playing. And so we just had to go out there and work. But Tornado was so good that he was able to call all of his shit in the ring. And as he was doing that, 20 motherfucking people, crowd, was eating it up. And they were cheering so fucking hard that it really pissed me the fuck off. You know, and I think that's where it has to have that competitive edge as a wrestler. And I look over to Mongo and he tags me in and I go, watch, I'm going to shut this fucking crowd up. And that was my moment of really being a real heel because I was sick of hearing those fans cheer so hard for Angel and Human Tornado. But that's going that deep dive into it. And so it was the real, let me cut him the fuck off. And let me put him in a chin lock or whatever the case is. But I had that real feeling of, I'm so sick of this crowd cheering so hard for these guys. You know, not that I wanted the cheers, but I was just feeling it. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of it in wrestling is the magic is always made when you feel it. You know, it's always when you really feel it. And when you, I think, and how do we allow ourselves to feel it into a match? We don't call so much. You know, I don't think you should call so much. Call every detail. You shouldn't call a snap mirror, 2 kicks to the stomach, and then run the ropes. No, man, all that should just be done in the ring. And hey, we're calling our spots and moves, but we need to leave room for the magic to be made. You know, and there's a lot of room for the magic to be made, and it's a lot of times when you're feeling it, and you're just, you know, like Eminem says, you got to lose yourself in the music, lose yourself in the wrestling. You know what I mean? Lose yourself in it, and you have to take it, and you have to believe that it's real. I really believe that because if you don't fucking believe your shit, why the fuck should anybody else? Right? It's an old saying, you know. I mean, I think a lot of the times, a lot of the hard times is just us. And I think I just had a conversation with Haas about this was that I believe in you. You know, Robbie believes in you. But you got to believe in yourself. It don't fucking matter if I believe in you. You know, it matters if you believe in yourself. And I think that also leads into that believability of a match, of that me really getting irritated about these fans cheering the face. No, fuck that shit. And if we both have that competitive edge, then man, I believe we're gonna. That's the great recipe for a great match. You know what I mean? Because we're both trying to. Obviously, we're working together. We have to work together, but we're trying to one up each other, 100%. Trying to one up each other. You know. And if you don't have that competitive edge, I think they always used to tell me, if you don't have the desire to be the world champion, then get the fuck out of this business. You know. And hey, I believe that, but also, you know, if you don't have that fucking competitive edge, man, this is gonna be rough on you, man. You gotta have that little bit of real chip on your shoulder. You know, hey, you're gonna get some fucking heat for it, and I understand that. But you know, show me a guy with no heat, and I'll show you a guy with no passion. You know, so sometimes you got to stand up for what you believe in. You know, and that's how wrestling does evolve. That's how wrestling can become what we make it today. Otherwise, it would have been, you know, George Hackenschmidt, you know, and Ed the Strangler Lewis, you know, and it would have never evolved from that. It would have just been wrestling for 8 hours, but we're working together. Nobody knows it. No, but now we're running the ropes and we're doing all this stuff. So, so going back to reiterate what we've covered so far.
Hey, Joey.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I got to get going right now.
Okay, sir. Thank you for showing up again, Brody.
To go off of your competitive spirit, I do think that is one of the most important things in wrestling. I remember when I started wrestling, me and Doug started about the same time. He actually debuted a month before me, which pissed me the fuck off. And that like kind of lit the fire under my ass. But like he was getting booked a lot of places right away because obviously he's a smaller guy, so he's easier to put in positions. But that stuff really, really got to me and really made me want to be, you know, the best that I could be to make myself, you know, undeniable to bookers and stuff like that. And it was a hard road. I think there was like a full year where it was like I had, you know, maybe one show a month, and I would complain to Chaos, being like, what am I doing wrong? And he would just say, just be patient, keep doing what you're doing, and it'll come. And, you know, eventually it came. So, yeah, that's just my final note. I'll try to be on as much as I can. So I'll see you guys later.
All right, Brody. Thank you, man. We'll be back Thursday again doing it. I'll post it so everyone has the info. Thank you, Brody.
Awesome. See you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Brody.
All right. So, before. So hey, definitely what he had mentioned, I was saying you have to have that competitive edge. That definitely is 100% fighting spirit. And for the guys that have worked for New Japan in here, I know you guys know 100% about fighting spirit. You know, that's kind of what New Japan is all about. It's about digging down deep and finding that fighting spirit. So if you ever hear me saying that, that's what those motherfuckers, when I was at the Inoki Dojo and they were kicking my fucking ass every day in Santa Monica in 2003, they would yell at me, you know, gotta dig down deep and find that fighting spirit and pull it out, you know, and you'd be like, oh my God, I can't do anymore. But yeah, it's so important. It's so important to have that fighting spirit in professional wrestling. We can't just go through the motions. We can't just go through the act of professional wrestling. I think a lot of you guys probably saw that Dark Side of the Ring episode with Dr. David Schultz. And if you haven't, look it up, check it out. But that's what wrestling was, you know, and I always started late. I always think I said I started 94, but that was only like 4 years removed from the 80s. And that's how it was. But when I came in, it was a lot easier because that was a dude that shouldn't have been in pro wrestling if I didn't come from a school of any sort, you know. So that did make it tough on me. And I think having that competitive edge will really help you guys out. 100%. And like I said, hey, you know, you got to walk that fine line. I think people would say Chaos is a mark for himself, and you're the biggest mark for yourself because you're always in character. I can never just talk to you. And there was a couple of us other guys at the time. I think I was second to a guy named Easy Money. Was what Chris Hamrick always used to tell me. But I think that's going back to really believing what you do, you know, having that real belief, believing in yourself, because you're trying to make people believe what you're doing in the ring is real, you know, and not only are you trying to do that, you're trying to do it in a realm and a world where 99.9% of people understand that wrestling's a work. You know, they don't understand how it's a work, but they know it's a work. It's like us in magic. You know, we know it's a work. I don't know how the fuck they do it, but I know it's not fucking real, right? You know, at least that's my take on it. You know, so, and that's the same thing for pro wrestling. You know, so really making people believe what you're doing in the ring starts with believing in your fucking self, believing that you can do it. But also not just fucking sitting there with just blind belief. You know, you gotta put in the work, the tremendous amount of work that it takes to look like a wrestler, to act like a wrestler, to now be a fucking wrestler. You know, it's in your blood. It should consume your soul and consume your heart and everything you do. But then going again, man, you're talking to a guy. I kind of go deep dive into pro wrestling. But if you do want to do this and you want to push yourself through the the trials and turmoil of pro wrestling, yeah, you better take a deep dive into it, you know, because like we take a fucking razor blade sometimes and we cut our fucking heads. Why? Because we're fucking crazy stupid. And why are we crazy stupid? Because we're in love with professional wrestling. You know, it's so important. It's so important. So I think we have maybe about 40 minutes left. What we're gonna do is I'm going to just go ahead and reiterate what we covered for today, and then we'll maybe open it up to some Q&A. I think, yeah, I still got Robbie here. He's been bouncing around on my screen. But yeah, we'll get Robbie's input on the curriculum in class today, and then we'll open it up to some Q&A, some questions, even if it doesn't regard to what we've covered today. Just if you have a general question, let's go ahead and ask away. Don't be afraid, right? I love saying this, dude. These old sayings aren't old sayings for nothing. Stupidest question is the one that's not asked, right? That's Joey Cass nodding his head, saying, "Yeah, I understand what the fuck that means," and having no fucking clue, you know. So don't be me. Don't be me. All right. So as we're breaking down our match, we went through a lot of details, probably even more details than I could have imagined when I was writing this online curriculum. We established face versus heel going through the curtain. and maybe something that we actually didn't even cover. We establish face versus heel before you're even seeing with what? With your music. You know, you should have music that says that's a fucking heel. You know, music that says this is a fucking face. And once again, the face isn't a goody two shoes. You don't have to come out to the Care Bear theme. You know, you definitely want to come out to something cool, something that has a hook. I like a little bit of an entrance, a lead up to it, to where you know they're playing, and then it hits. You should be able to hear where it hits. That's your entrance right there. You know, some people just run right out. You should think about your entrance. Think about what you're doing. You really get, and going back to that deep dive of it. You know, you should practice your entrance. You don't need a fucking curtain, man. You just come through your door. Put your sheet over your door, and that's your curtain. Because chances are, when you go to indie wrestling, that's going to be the same damn entrance that you're using at some of these shows. You know, and that's just indie wrestling, man. So coming through the curtain, establishing yourself with your music, establishing yourself with your facial expressions, establishing yourself with your body movement, right? Your body language. I think also establishing yourself with your poses, right? You should have a pose right there. We'll say, so everybody knows what we're talking about, right there outside the curtain at the Titantron. You know, as you come down to the ramp and you stand up on the apron where Triple H would spit his water, you should have your own pose there. As you go into the ring and go to the corner and The Rock has his pose and he's smelling the air, you should have your pose there. And then I think there's also that one right in the middle of the ring where Shawn Michaels is spread out and he's doing his thing, and you should have your pose fucking there. I remember a guy named Bill Behrens. He's a AJ Styles agent. He's really big in TNA back in the day when me and Smiley went in 2003 or something like that. And that's something that stuck with me, is what he told me was he was like, you got a job match. You know, you're not going to get much in, but you're going to have your chance right here to pose, right in front of the TNA, you know, whatever it was, the tunnel, and then you're going to have a chance right here to pose. So those are your best chances to be on camera, because the match is going to be really quick and this, that, and the other. And so, but I think that's so important. That's so important, you know. And at the time, I think I was 8 years in. I didn't know anything like that, you know. So, but that's so important. I want to drill that into your head, and that goes back to that. If you played that video game, whatever wrestling video game, because the ones I used to play were the N64 ones, and they used to have all that shit. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure they've gotten better since then, you know. And if you're lacking, and if you don't have a taunt, and if you don't have your pose there, something that the video game has somewhere there. I'm not saying wrestle like a video game. I'm saying when you're creating your character, you should have all that in your book, in your pocket, in your character development, and ready, you know, because it's like they're teaching you how to be a pro wrestler right there in that fucking video game, you know. So, all right, so we're establishing face and heel right through that curtain, you know. We can even establish face and heel before we lock up, before we lock horns. We can establish it with circling, right? Ric Flair will go for the lockup, but then step to the side and he'll woo, and then he'll strut, you know. Some like what I would do sometimes is go for the lockup, and the face would charge me, and I'd back up and crawl through the second and top rope and tell him to wait. And since I'm on the rope, the referee would have to push him back. That's establishing that I'm a heel, that I'm a coward. You know, and then when we do our hold to hold, when we're doing hold to hold, right? Like what did Robbie say? Robbie is like, I like to think like my face gets 2 moves to my 1, right? And once again, this is just a rule. It's not a law, you know. This is just a guideline. It's not set in stone. We want to be able to evolve our matches one day, you know. So my face is going to out wrestle me. 2 moves to my 1. 2 moves to my 1. 2 moves to my 1, until as a heel I get so fucking frustrated and I punch him in the fucking face in the middle of a wrestling match, you know. And so you got to deep dive. Can you imagine you're watching the Olympics and they're wrestling and that dude throws a fucking that would be a big fucking deal, you know. Yeah. So that's what I like to think about it. I'm gonna throw a punch. We're wrestling. Now I'm throwing punches because I got out wrestled. I got embarrassed, and I got upset. I got frustrated, as a heel. So, and then after I throw that punch, I think I'm gonna give it to him some more, right? I'm gonna give him the big clothesline. So I whip him, but that punch is only the initial cut. That's the initial cut from the heel. So as I whip him, Robbie ducks my clothesline. He gives me that arm drag. He gives me that hip toss. He gives me that drop kick. I come after him. He gives me that big body slam. He goes after me, and I powder the fuck out of the ring because I don't want no more. And as I powder him out, I bait him, come on, you come and get me, motherfucker. And he's like, okay, I'll come and beat your ass out there then too, right? He chases me out. I come back in. I cut him off. We can call that a cutoff if we wanted to. But if we want to up the ante a little bit more, he breaks off my cutoff from jumping him and rolling in the ring, and he starts lighting me up. And he goes to whip me, and now I can really cut him off. And what's my cutoff? We should understand what's our finish. Going right. What did Brody tell us? We should be detailed on our cutoffs, very detailed. I like to be so detailed that my cutoff is going to work the body part that I'm going to work in the match, which is going to lead to the finish that I'm going to do in the match. So it's all together. So basically what that means is if I want to do move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 that I learned in wrestling school this week, that's not going to happen. Because if I'm working the neck, that's going to cut off some of these moves. That's going to actually make you do less if you're following these guidelines. You know what I mean? It should make you do less. You should want to be able to get a reaction with less. You know what I mean? Going back to Scott Hall, I'm going to do a headlock and get a bigger pop. And he would. So you should be able to do that, and you should want to do that. So as I have it broken down, number 1, establish face and heel. Okay? Number 2, the face shines. And number 3, the heel cutoff. And obviously, we should probably be adding in there 1A and 1B, which is like the hold-to-hold shine, the initial cut, all the little details that we've put into it. But just to break it down right now, we have number 1, establish face versus heel. You can establish it through the curtain. Before you lock horns, you can establish it, and you should establish it in the hold-to-hold, right? That leads to the initial cut. After the initial cut, we go right into the big baby face shine. And after the big baby face shine, we cut them off. Pretty simple, right, guys? Pretty simple. What moves do we do in that scenario? That's what we're going to do next on Thursday, is we're going to call it. And we're going to have, maybe you're going to call a match with Robbie. Maybe Guy Cool will call a match with Robbie, and we'll sit there and say, we're going to call 1, 2, and 3. If you're in there with me and Robbie, we're probably not even going to call it. We're just going to actually just do it. We know where we have to go, right? And we know that we will get there, So that's what we're going to do on Thursday is actually we'll go ahead and call it and see what moves will fit in here besides the arm drag, the hip toss, and the body slam, So that should be pretty simple for you guys. Establishing the face and heel, the initial cut. Number 2 is the face shines, and number 3 is the cutoff. And if you're writing these down and putting them into your book, by the end we'll have probably about 7 steps. And I just want you to remember and reiterate this, that there is no one way of calling a match. These are guidelines for the new guys coming in to be able to understand psychology in a wrestling match, and be able to call a match. Because I used to just go out there and call all the coolest moves that I could do, all the coolest spots, and those were my matches. They weren't per se anything that we do here at Santino Brothers. So, is there anything, Robbie? Is there anything that you want to add on those 3 steps that we just covered today with for the match breakdown?
Yeah, real quick. Just a quick reminder. I know we talked about how there's always different babyface of being a coward or not being a coward. Always remember though, as a babyface, babyface never backs up. Babyface always keeps moving forward. So if you're heel cowards, you're moving forward. If your heel's a baddest and wants to go toe to toe, you're still moving forward. You never back up. Babyface never backs up. That's the one most important thing. Like I think you gotta, as a babyface, you gotta show that you're willing to fight. We're not goody two shoes, but we're ready to fight, and that's what it is. We're ready to fight. We're wrestlers. So if we're gonna get into this, we're gonna get into this, and I'm not gonna back down until you put me down.
Exactly, guys. So we're gonna go ahead and open it up to any questions that we have. First regarding the match breakdown, and then if you have any other questions, and then I think we got about 28 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and end the class. I think me and Robbie haven't done an end of class speech in probably 2 months now, maybe like 7 weeks, right?
Yeah.
7 weeks. So yeah, we'll do an
Question.
end of class speech. Yes, sir. Go ahead and speak it. Who's got a question? Charles, go ahead.
Woo. Now, just from the camera perspective, sometimes I get really annoyed when people do get into the ring and they're just constantly posing and posing and posing and trying to get the crowd in. I'm like, can you please already stop? Move on. Now, usually I'll be able to like control it by telling Isaac turn the music off. But if we're like in indie shows, is there like a rule of thumb of just how long when you get in and staying on the top rope and interacting with the crowd? Is there like a rule of thumb that would be actually something where you're not overdoing it? Because I could imagine that if I was a promoter and I see this guy just wasting all this time and you're like, he's not even that good, even if, what would be a like rule of thumb that newbies, if and when the day comes when I debut and I could go to other shows, what would you just feel it, or what would you suggest?
Well, I think a lot of that starts with the promoter controlling the music. The music really controls a lot of the show. If we're running slow on time and Robbie's still on the mic and he's talking, I'm gonna try to wait for he says something to like that's an ending, and I'll hit his music even though he might not be done. The music will control a lot of that stuff. So I think that falls onto the promoter, the director of the show. How long do they want the entrances to be? Obviously, you might have somebody like The Undertaker where you're like, dude, the entrance is the match, so that's a different story. But for the most part, I think it falls on the director or the promoter. If you have a great music guy, he should be able to read that himself and be able to shut the music down. And as you shut the music down, that cues everything to go. That cues the announcer, now it's time for me to step up and say something. But music cues are always great on getting people to move without actually communicating with them. Obviously, one of the main things I love doing is hitting the music right when the show's over. You hit the music and you let people know like this is the credits rolling, the show's over. And then when you really want them to get the fuck out, you cut the music off, like get out of here already. You know what I mean? So I think the music has a lot to do with controlling that aspect of it. Now, if it's a thing where, like, if my song is going, I'm probably still gonna pose. I don't know. Maybe I'll sit in the corner and just wait. But it is kind of like your spotlight time. But I think that definitely would fall on the director or the promoter, whoever's running the show, at that what they want. So, any other questions to open up to?
I wanted to just touch on something in regards to like
Adnan.
When it would just regards to like posing and entrances and stuff like that, just because I see it all the time, both on TV and both in an independent perspective, is that sometimes guys aren't focusing on where the hard cam or where cameras should be when they're doing certain poses and stuff. And it's always something that annoys me, having done this, from the perspective, like going, like telling some guy after, it's like, why'd you pose there and not pose over there? So it's just saying this, whenever you're making your entrance, especially or whatnot, be mindful of just where cameras are, because like it's great, but when people rewatch it, they want to be able to see you too, like you've got to be mindful about who can see you during that. And I think knowing where your hard cam and just where your cameras are in general is very important, especially in modern day pro wrestling, where literally 9 out of 10 shows are being filmed in some manner,
And it's not only important, you're going to regret it. If you're looking at the fans and your head and body and language and everything is away from the camera, because all we got at the end is the memories and the video. And when you ain't looking at the video, it really kind of like, it really sucks. So it's so important to play to that camera. That's why I think it's so important that I tell all the guys to, get your ass to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Try to let them to help out, but not only help out, let them know this is what I do. To try to get on that show, because that's right here, that's local, and they go to TV right here in Los Angeles. And the best part about it is they teach you right then and there how to be camera ready, how to be ready, because a lot of us, we have the goal to wrestling, for the big leagues, and the big leagues, that something the big leagues all have in common is they have TV deals. And so it's so important, especially right now. That's why they're still going. It's because they got TV deals. I don't know if Vince had a TV deal, if he would still be doing the wrestling, So it's so important to play to that camera, and you're gonna appreciate it yourself later, because you're gonna want to see your face and you're gonna want to see your facial expressions. I think to be a pro wrestler, we have a little bit of that cockiness to us, a little bit of that. We want to watch ourselves. We want to talk about ourselves. I think because we all see it on Twitter and we all see it online. A lot of wrestlers, we talk about ourselves, So it's definitely so important to play to that camera.
I want to add about music is make sure music.
You're kind of cutting out right there, Charles.
Okay.
At least
Can you
for
hear me right now? Can you hear me
better.
right now?
Yeah, 100%.
All right. I think it just has to catch up between the headset and receiver. But I always say to make sure you have, because one of the hardest things, like when I go to a new, like an indie show, especially like a very low budget show, and they want their song played, but they don't have a copy of it, and they expect us to go to YouTube and find a copy of it, and I'm like, dude, we can't get any internet connection, and we can't find it. You're gonna have to go out to this song. That's for those who specifically like certain music, their influences. So making sure you have a copy of it, whether USB or whatever, that can be played, or even something on your phone that actually can be played, be plugged into a mixer, would ensure that you're coming into the music you want to come into versus available on the person's laptop.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important, especially in today. You should have it. You should have a YouTube link. You should have an email to send out with your music on it, right? Like Charles said, you should have a USB. You should have a fucking CD just in case, because I know, hey, you want to do lucha shows, man. Some of those guys are still using CDs, man. And you're gonna give them a USB, and they're gonna be like, "What the fuck you want me to do with that?" So you should just be prepared. I don't think you need to go as far as a cassette player or a cassette, but definitely maybe you still need a CD. I don't know. But you should just definitely be prepared. Having it on an email and a USB would probably save your music guy a lot of stress. So it'd be very important to help them out, and they're looking for it, because then otherwise they got to find something for you. And that makes it harder. So yeah, definitely have your music set and ready when it's time. So any other questions that we have here for in general, or for what we covered? Yes, Dane.
So one of the points you mentioned was like, if you don't want to be champion, like you should get out of the business. And somebody mentioned in a different group, same question, and they were like, oh, what if I don't want to be champion? Well, what if that's not my character? And I thought that was kind of interesting, because the return answer was, yeah, you should think about where your character is going to get you on the card. Are you a jobber? Are you a mid-carder? Are you going to be a top-tier guy? So if you want to touch on that, I mean, I thought it was a pretty interesting way to respond to it.
Well, I think that goes back with believing in yourself. I think necessarily we wouldn't think a guy like Mikey Whipwreck would be championship material by just looking at him. But that motherfucker's got wins over Stone Cold. I don't know, did he wrestle Mick Foley, or was he his partner? He's a tag team champion with Mick Foley. And the story that Paul Heyman wrote was beautiful and perfect for Mikey Whipwreck. So I think that, I think it goes back to believing in yourself. I think a lot of the times, maybe what you're saying, you correct me if I'm wrong, Dane, is something that Les Brown would speak about. And Les Brown, if you guys don't know who he is, he's a motivational speaker that I listen to. And he says, I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but the quote is, shoot for the moon in everything you do. Because even if you miss, you'll still be among the stars.
Yep.
The finish of the quote is, too many people shoot low and hit. You see what I'm saying? People shoot low because they don't have to deal with failure. They don't have to deal with not making it. They don't have to deal with all of that. So they shoot low and rather shoot low and hit as opposed to shoot for that fucking moon. And even if you fucking miss, you're probably going to end up better than shooting low. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if that really helps on answering your question. Does? Okay, so yeah, I definitely think you got to believe in yourself and you got to shoot for that fucking moon, man. Or whatever the highest is. Shoot for the highest valley, the highest peak, you know, because I guarantee you it's going to be better than shooting low. And a lot of us in life, not just wrestling, we shoot low because it's more comfortable, you know, because we don't believe in ourselves, you know. Sometimes it's fucking hard to believe in yourself. You know I go through that. I go through that a lot, you know. But I always love that quote by Les Brown. So definitely you want to shoot high, man. You shoot high and miss, and you'll still be up there in the stars, man. Because if you shoot low and hit, that might be the rest of your life. You know what I mean? So, hey, let them hang out. Let your balls hang out, man. Throw it all to the wall and see what fucking sticks, you know? Because I'm telling you, whoever you think your character is or your perfect personality in pro wrestling is, I'm telling you, by the time it's over, by the time it's all said and done, you're gonna have 10 different characters like Chris Jericho does, or you have it's your final form ain't here yet, and your final form won't be here probably in 5 years. Final form will probably hit about 10, 15 years, you know, as you keep evolving. So let's keep shooting high, guys. Let's definitely keep shooting high. Are there any other questions before we close it up? Who's got Cam Gates? Go ahead and speak on it, brother. Hold on, Cam. I think you're on mute.
Take off your mute, Cam. Take off your mute.
All right, there you go. Speak on it, Cam.
You guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so one thing that you guys were saying is like the heels and faces. Like most of the time, the face is gonna out wrestle the heel, outdo the heel. So one thing, like for me specifically, especially since like with the submission title stuff, like it's kind of hard to do that. Where I feel like I should be out, you know, schooling a lot of people as, you know, a champ. And so a thing that I struggled with was like, how do I still be a heel and do that? And I was reading the Mick Foley, one of his books, and he was like talking about like one of the examples that he gave was like Apollo Creed. Like what made him such a good heel was that like he was good, like he was like pretty much untouchable, but he would then come and like, you know, like how do you say, like put it in your face. So like what I like to do is like I'll maybe out wrestle a face, but then maybe like mess with his hair or give him a wedgie when I get into like a good spot, you know. So what my question is like like that idea of like a good face or a good heel, because he's so good, is like it makes him kind of, you hate him like that Apollo Creed type heel. Like what do you think about that? And also like what are other things you can do to like work that way?
I think that's a great example. You know, it goes back to saying the same thing about a face. A face isn't a goody two shoes, and the same thing for a heel. It doesn't mean you don't know how to fucking wrestle either, man. You're a bad motherfucking wrestler too, and not bad in the bad way, bad in a good way. Michael Jackson bad. You know what I'm saying? So like I think that's a perfect example, is having a guy like Apollo Creed, right? You know, I think there's guys in real life that do that shit, you know. I think what we're talking about also cowering down and backing down, and then I think going back to if your character or your personality doesn't call from it, then it's going to be different. And I think being the submission champion, excuse me, I think being the submission champion is exactly that example of You know what? You should be out wrestling guys. What I would like to add to you for that is that you're just a heel is just as good as the face, except the heel. Now this is just me, and so I want you to go on a deep dive, Cam, and think about your character and what your heel character would do. So a deep dive for me would be, as a heel, I'm just as good as the face, except I stay up late, I drink beer, I skip the gym in the morning, I do a shitty workout instead of a full-on workout. I cut corners is basically what I do as a heel. That's what I like to think of as a heel. It's never come up in a promo that says, oh, I cut corners as a heel. No, that's going into that deep dive of what kind of heel I am, and that's what I like to think about. So why am I not as good as the face today? I'm hungover. Fucking, I was up all night with the ladies. So I have all these excuses of why I wasn't on the game. The ref fucked me. Whatever the case is, I'm never wrong. That's what I like to think as a heel. So I want you to go into a deep dive and say, well, this is what my character is. My character out wrestles people, but this is how I can also be a heel. Right? What does Ric Flair do? He out wrestles motherfuckers all day, but he cowers off. That's what he does to be a heel, So that would probably be another example. Does that kind of answer your question, Cam?
Yeah, definitely.
Also, think about
go ahead, Robbie.
this, Cam. Like Apollo Creed, right? He was badass. He was untouchable until Rocky found that chink in his armor, right? Once Rocky found that chink in his armor and started hammering away on him, we knew Rocky had Apollo. So that's the thing. You're a champ. You're the submission champ. You're gonna out wrestle motherfuckers all day, every day, till they find that chink in your armor. And that's that story you tell. That's why you're the champ, until they find the chink in your armor.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. Dom, I think Dom had a question. Did you have one?
Yeah, I wanted to ask. So, as with character development, or as with having your gimmicks set up, how would you know when it's time to, I guess, evolve or switch it up? I guess if it is that time, or when will it get stale? Like, what's the best time to just have that to gauge when it's time to mix things up a bit, I guess.
Well, I mean, obviously, when you ain't getting booked, when you stop getting booked, a lot of the times, and I think I'm probably an example of this, and I know another one is Superstar Billy Graham, is a lot of the times we get to the point of, I don't want to do blonde hair chaos no more. I want to do shoot fighter chaos, and I created Santino brother chaos, Was that the best decision? Hell no. Hell no. I should have been Rock Superstar chaos. But I felt I wanted to evolve. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to keep it, keep it interesting. And then from Rock Superstar Chaos, or from Santino Brother Chaos, I turned to this voodoo guy. I probably should have went back to blonde hair chaos if I was going to change again. But I same thing. I wanted to be different, because I think that it's like if you have an act that's working, stick with it. Like Joey Ryan's dick flip act, it's working. I think it would hurt him if he says, I'm going to change it. So I think when his act ain't working no more, and Joey Ryan's fairly special, because by the time his dick flip act is probably not going to work anymore, he's going to have another act going on the same character. You know what I mean? But if we're having a character or an act or a wrestler, and it's not working anymore, then I think it's time to evolve and change. What they used to do back in the day was they would leave the territory, and that's how the wrestler would become fresh again. If I was a heel, I would wrestle Hogan and give Hogan a run for his belt, and then he'd beat me, and then I'd leave this territory and wrestle Harley Race and give him a run for his money for his belt, and then I'd leave and go to another territory. And that's what kept me fresh back in the day, is that we had or I didn't have it, but they did. They had the luxury of going to a different territory. There wasn't TV. We didn't see the AWA TV where the WWE TV was, so it was changed up. So they got to keep their characters a little longer. Nowadays, we're on the internet and we're all over the internet. So I think when your act is getting stale, and how do you know when it's getting stale? When you're not getting booked no more. You know, that's how you know it's getting stale, and that's how you know it's trying to change it up. And in your head and in your mind, you might be like, this is the greatest fucking character in pro wrestling history. Man, hey, I'm gonna say, hey, give it another run and stick with it, but it's probably time to change it up. You know, maybe stay with the same character, but tweak this, change this up, do this. You got to change it up because that's how we become. What was the first thing that we talked about today was becoming complacent, and we don't want to become complacent. So I think to answer your question, Dom, and maybe Robbie can reiterate on it, is when you're not getting booked anymore, you know, it's time to change it up. But like Superstar Billy Graham, I mean, Superstar Billy Graham, I keep looking. I got a picture of his history right here in my office. He became the karate guy. He was Superstar Billy Graham with the blonde hair and everything, one Hulk Hogan copied, and he became a karate guy with a bald head and a mustache, and he didn't wear tie dye anymore. He wore karate pants with a red stripe, and everyone hated it, man. You know, I don't know. Maybe everyone didn't hate it. I know, like, you know, I don't like watching Superstar Billy Graham when he's the karate guy. You know, and I'm pretty sure people didn't like watching Rock Superstar Chaos, when he was the Santino brother guy or the voodoo guy. You know, but sometimes you fall into something in your head and where you feel you need to change. Is it always the best idea? And not if the act is hot. No, it's not. But maybe sometimes you need to do it. You know, there's guys like Dave Chappelle. I don't want to do the Dave Chappelle show no more. Why? Because I don't want to be funny no more. I don't want to fucking put on another show for you. And he just left his $50 million sitting on the table for season 3 of the Chappelle show. You know, sometimes it's just something inside that you want to change. But to answer your question, in pro wrestling, yeah, you know, number one, we're trying to make money, but also number two, we're doing it because we fucking love it. And if you're making money but you don't fucking love what you're doing, then change it the fuck up. You know what I mean? If you're getting,
you gotta be happy first to do what you're doing, and if you ain't happy, that's when it's time to change.
That's what I was telling the guys the other day. If you're not having fun, you ain't doing it right. Number one is having fun, because you know we can make money. You know, there's other ways to get a job and make money, but we want to have fun. We want to love what we fucking do, and it should consume our soul and consume our passion. You know. Does anybody else have any questions before we close it out?
I was going to say, piggybacking on what Dom's got, I was curious as to what your thoughts are when you have multiple characters. So some people like do a thing where someplace there's something in particular, in other places there's something else in particular. Because you were just saying about Joey Ryan. Joey Ryan just started doing like a right to censor kind of gimmick out in corporate Impact, but back on the indies, he's still doing the dick flip thing. Or like when Liger got really, like 4 times in his career, Liger got really mad and he transformed into Kishin Liger, which is like this darker version of Liger for a match or something like that. What's your thoughts on like having multiple characters, like either in a promotion or in different promotions, that like you can pull out of your back pocket or something like that?
I think it's a great idea. I think especially on the indies also, we have to learn how to work heel and face, so we can't just be like, I am this one character and I'm a heel. The guy might be like, fuck you, kid, you're a face today and you're losing in 2 minutes to a powerbomb, you know? But I think what you're describing feeds the soul. Liger changing it up and being Dark Liger, I think that feeds the soul, because you want to be something else. We're creators, you know, in pro wrestling. You know, we create, and I think that feeds the soul to change it up. At least that's what it did for me by changing up my characters. And I want to reiterate, was it the smartest thing for me to do? Probably not. I probably would have got way more booked being my other blonde haired character that posed and did all this and was tanned and everything. But that's the character that most of my fans like. But hey, you got to do what you got to do to feed your soul, you know. So I think finding different avenues, working different characters, it's so important. It's so goddamn important, you know, because you're not going to be the same dude you are at one promotion that you are at the next, you know. So, and you have to be able to evolve and work. I think there was Christopher Daniels. He wrestled for New Japan for years, but I think you're very, very hard pressed to find Christopher Daniels in the New Japan ring. I'm not saying he's not there, but you're gonna find Curry Man all day, you know. And that's a testament to him, because that character was amazing. It was completely different of what Christopher Daniels showed you who he was in the ring at the time, you know. And it was like, Curry, man, really? That's Christopher Daniels? That's him? That's what I would always say. And I'd be like, man, it's such a different character, you know. And I think that also feeds the soul, lets you know that I can do different things, you know, and really gives you that confidence on building it up. So we got about 4 minutes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and close it down, and then I'll hand it to Robbie also, like we usually do. But I think the biggest takeaway for today is let's write down our match breakdown. You know, we talked about so much more. I'll probably post this, guys, so you guys can go ahead and rewatch it if you need to take some more notes. And then also help us on our curriculum as we move forward. We'll have everything online also to help us out, and that's what we put everything online for the students, is to help us out, because what we might say, you might not hear it, but then when you go back to the video, it's right there forever. So the biggest takeaways are, you know, obviously the match breakdown, we're establishing face versus heel, which is number 1. We want to add our initial cut in there. Number 2 is the face shines, and number 3 is the heel cutoff. And we want to break it down like that. But I think the like I'm talking about, the biggest takeaway is the attention to the details. The attention to the details is so important, because that is the key. And you'll hear a lot of the veterans say, less is more, kid, less is more, less is more. How do we do that? How do we do less is more? Pay attention to the details. That's how we do it. Okay. So I think that's going to be the today's biggest takeaway is pay attention to the details. Have a little bit of motherfucker in you that has that competitive edge, that fighting spirit, that will to want to be the best, and believe in yourself. Obviously, right? You have to believe in yourself, because I'm not going to believe in you if you don't even believe in yourself, right? How am I supposed to? How is a fan supposed to believe what we're doing if you don't believe what you're doing? You know. So I think that's so important. Anything else you want to add to it, Robbie, before we end?
No, guys, just keep continuing putting in that work. Stay sharp, body and mind and soul if you can. And keep your wrestling mind sharp, guys. Watch wrestling, break it down for yourselves. You know, see where you can find what we just went over for you newer guys. See where you can find it when you're watching wrestling. See where you can find where they establish heel face. See where they put the shine and where they got the cutoff. See where you can see it. You know, that's going to keep your mind sharp, guys.
Yeah, definitely got to start watching wrestling different. You know, we're not watching it as a fan anymore. We're watching it as a student of the game, and it changes everything.
Yep.
You start rewinding it and saying, how did Kurt Hennig take over? What did he do to take over? He was just getting beat up, and you see the cutoff, or you see the transition, you see the comeback, and a lot of times it's subtle, you know?
Yep.
So definitely pay attention to that. Watch the wrestling like that. And I really enjoyed this, guys. So I hope you guys got something out of it. And we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and post for you guys what we covered today. What Robbie also covered right now was stay in shape, guys. Stay in shape. I'm gonna go ahead and post for you the core exercises that I have written down. And if you have no clue what to do, man, grab a deck of cards, and everything represents a different workout. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring it in. We'll go ahead and end it. Here we go. Santino's on. Bring it in, Adnan. All right, here we go. Santino's on 3. 1, 2, 3. Santino. All right, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will put the invite back out on for Thursday, and I will see you guys here Thursday, and then just have your notebooks and everything ready. All right, guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chaos.
Take care. Stay in shape. Hit
Thank
your
you,
workouts
everyone.
if you haven't done them already.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate
Thank you.
everyone's time.
Thanks, Robbie. Thanks, Joey.
Take care, guys. Good seeing you.
Take care.